start?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second day of this photography techniques and tricks program organized by Mandsaur University, Madhya Pradesh. Okay. So, welcome everybody, and today what we're going to take a look at is some tips and techniques that you can use to improve your photography. Towards the end of this program, I will try and answer most of your questions because I feel most of the questions will get answered during the course of this talk. What we're going to start off right now with is a little critique, constructive critique of some of the photos that have been shot by you, and we're going to comment on them. Okay. So what we have on screen right now is an image. Okay. So supposedly a nature landscape image. Now, when we look at this image, what is the subject? See, what is very important for any photograph is the photograph itself should indicate the subject. Okay? So now in this case, we have some kind of mountain or hill there, and we have a body of water, and we have some other trees and some other formations in the foreground. Okay? So whatever is closest to you, to the bottom of the screen, is called the foreground, and what is away from you and towards the middle and top of the screen is your background, so to say. So this image, technically speaking, does not have the sharpness towards the end. So landscape photography requires sharpness end to end, mostly. Okay, so you have to use an aperture number like f16 or f22 to get everything in focus. And also you need to focus the right place so that whatever is before that focal point and after that focal point is in focus. Okay. So generally, it is indicated that as a very simple rule, you focus 1/3 into the scene. Okay. So basically, you take your distance. So for example, from the bottom of the screen right up to the top of the mountain, that would generally be the distance or the area that you want in focus, because you can't get the sky in focus. So what you do is you take 1/3 of that portion from the bottom to the top of the mountain, focus on that area, use a f-stop number like f16 or f22, and you'll get the whole area in focus. Also, when you take a picture like this, okay, we don't need so much of the sky. Okay, so maybe you can keep only 1/3 of the sky and 2/3 of the ground in this case. Another reason why you don't need the sky in this picture, because the sky is plain, it is bare. There are no clouds, there is no drama, nothing happening in the sky, so it is not very interesting. So if I were you, I would crop it somewhere just above the mountain so that the whole focus of this picture remains the mountain and
सर स्क्रीन विजिबल नहीं है सर स्क्रीन विजिबल नहीं है
Mr. Jaiswal's screen is
no not visible. Mr. Jaiswal is still in progress.
Okay.
Mr. Jaiswal, can you reshare your screen, please?
Is it visible?
No, not yet. Not yet on Facebook.
Now it is visible for me, sir.
Okay, now it's visible on Facebook as well.
Yes, it is there. Yes.
All right.
Right.
Okay, so basically you would crop it somewhere just above the mountain. Okay. And another thing is, what is the subject of this picture? Okay. If it is about the lake, then you have to show at least as much as you can of the lake, if not the full lake. Okay. So it is cut here. Okay. So at least show the whole lake. Okay. And along with the mountains if you want. So maybe you could have changed your vantage point. Maybe you could have gone more left and then shot so that you can get more of the lake. So this looks like a panoramic crop. I don't know whether this is a panoramic picture, but it looks certainly like one. And so basically also try to make sure that there are more interesting elements in the picture itself. Okay, so please try to uh, you know, try to avoid putting things in the frame which are not interesting or which do not are not part of the story. So we'll try and take a look at some of these things as we look at techniques today. We'll look at composition rules, etc. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, we'll take a look at that. Okay. So let's go to the next picture. That's the same one. Okay. So now in this image is looking a little over processed, number one. The good thing is there is a nice texture in the sky, and there is a reflection, which is a good thing. And there is also a foreground element with the trees, etc., which are giving a sense of depth in this picture. Now, unfortunately, the focus of this image has been only on the front trees in the foreground. There is not much focus in the background. It's not clear. Secondly, the picture looks a bit over processed. Okay. So it's not looking very natural. It looks more like an HDR kind of image. Secondly, as you can see, the composition wise, it's fine, no problem. And because we are using reflections, normally whenever you use reflections, you use a half and half kind of composition. So the reflection takes half of the frame and the other part is the natural picture itself. Okay. So this is fine composition wise, only need to improve on the processing. The process, if it's taken directly out of camera and if it's an HDR picture, then there's very little you can do about it. But if it's taken normally and processed, maybe you can reduce the processing. The sky looks very unnatural. It is looking kind of very cyanish, which is not a natural kind of sky color. Also, there is a blue cast on this image. So you need to remove the blue cast because as you can see, the foliage is looking bluish. So we don't need that in this image. So when you're processing, maybe you can use a temperature slider and make it a little warmer, and this will look much better. All right, next image. So now in this image, we have, again, there's a disturbing area in this image where you have that small branch on the left-hand side, okay, which is disturbing this image. So you need to get rid of that small branch on the left-hand side. Secondly, the highlights are blown out in the sky, which you need to take care of. Okay. Secondly, if you don't want a silhouetted look in the leaves in this image, you can pull up the shadows in this so that you will see a little more detail in the leaves and the bark of the tree. Also, the horizon looks a little bit off in the sense that it's not straight. Maybe I'm wrong, but it looks at this point of time, it looks sloping to the left. So you may want to correct that, right? Secondly, you may want to process it a little bit and add a little bit of contrast to it. And that's it. Nothing else to be done in this. Next. So again, here we need to see when you make a composition like this, everything that is in the frame should have some meaning and should tell the story. So what exactly are we trying to say in this picture? Is it about that small kind of structure there on the left-hand side, or is it about the buildings on the right-hand side? Okay. Now this is a half and half composition where you have half the terrain in the composition and half the sky in the composition, which is not a good composition. We need to use the rule of thirds, wherein you can keep either 2/3 of the ground and 1/3 of the sky, or you keep 2/3 of the sky and 1/3 of the ground. Generally, more area is allocated to that area which talks about the subject or what is more interesting in your picture. Okay. Secondly, the left-hand side, the palm tree can be taken care of, when be removed. This pole, which is right in the front on the right-hand side, can be removed, and then the clarity of the picture would increase. Okay. And secondly, you can crop this image further so that all the areas on the right-hand side may not be required, in my opinion. And you can also add a little more drama in the sky by adding contrast in the sky so that the clouds can be brought out to make it more meaningful. Or if you don't want to do that, then you use a very little area of the sky because the sky is not interesting. Okay. Also in the foreground, you have a horizontal bark of the tree which needs to be removed. All right, so this is a nice picture, and this foreground is not really doing anything. On the bottom right corner. Okay, so in this case, if you want to show the body of water, it's fine. It will you can crop it just to the body of the water without that foreground. Little bit of the water can be shown, and you can crop from the right hand side, bring it in, so that that uninteresting space on the right hand side can be gotten rid of. Okay. Also, you can crop a little from the left hand side, and you can maybe improve the drama in the sky by adding a little contrast there and a little bit of saturation to this image, and I think that should do it. Okay. Now here is a case where this is too tight a crop. Okay, for an image, it is too tight. Okay, so there should be at least some space around the subject, a little bit of space around the subject. So what we call a breathing space. And so the image also is looking quite dark. It needs to be brightened a bit. See, whenever we shoot wildlife, people, okay, what is very important for any living thing, okay, animal or person or whatever, is the eyes, because all the expression is found in the eyes. So in this case, it seems like the focus of your camera has gone onto the back of the cat and not on the face of the cat. So you have to do the opposite in this case. The face has to be brightened and the backside of the cat has to be darkened. So that will give you a better image. And also, when you shoot images like this, make sure you leave some space around the subject itself. So again, here there is a color cast problem. There's a blue cast on this image, which you can see in the leaves and in the petals of the flower. Okay. Also, you can crop this picture so that it takes only the flower into account, from the bottom and from the right side, all that disturbing elements can be cropped off. Okay. Next. Okay, so here, what is the meaning of this picture? What is it really trying to show? Has a good depth in it because there is a leading into the picture. But the story here, what does it say? It just looks like people who have stopped on the way and they're just out of their cars. Okay, so not much meaning in the picture. Okay, so for an image like this, it's a nice image. It needs to be processed. It is underexposed. It needs to be exposed properly, or you need to process it so that you bring up the exposure on the flower, which is in front. Also, there seems to be kind of a purplish bluish cast on the image, which needs to be removed. And the disturbance on the right-hand side, on the top, on the sky needs to be removed. Okay, be sharpened also. Okay, so now this image is really not doing anything. Too many disturbances. You have lines, you have lampposts. So a lot of confusion here. It's a no-no. You should only frame the flowers, maybe with the building uh, and something like that. Too many elements, very confusing. Next. Okay, so now this one really, we don't know what it is. Firstly, if you're using reflections, you must have a half and half composition so that you can see exactly what is above and below. Number two is we don't know really what this is. So it doesn't do anything. Okay, so this picture can be cropped from the left up to the clouds. Okay, and the horizon can be straightened, and there can be a little more contrast in the sky and reduce the exposure of the image so that the colors in the sky will get more vibrant and it will look better. Next. This is reviewed. Okay, so this is a nice image. Needs a little more light. It's very dark. So when you increase the light in this image, what is going to happen is your sky is going to get blown out. So by using selective processing like a adjustment brush in Lightroom or masking in Photoshop, you can reduce the exposure on the sky and bring up the exposure on the rest of the image, and it will turn out to be a nice picture. Next. Okay, so this is a nice picture. I don't think you need to do anything else other than remove that small spotlight at the bottom, some kind of light that is there, which is disturbing the image. Otherwise, it's fine. You can increase the contrast in the sky to make it more dynamic and maybe add a little yellow in the sky so it'll look even better. Next.
सर आई थिंक हमें अब इससे ज़्यादा एफर्ट नहीं लेनी चाहिए, हमें लेक्चर करना चाहिए क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोगों ने, जितने भी लोगों ने हमें फोटोग्राफ्स भेजी हैं, सबसे पहले तो जब भी आपसे कोई असाइनमेंट मांगा जाता है तो उसको प्रॉपर वे में भेजना होता है। आप सभी ने सिर्फ और सिर्फ फोटोज भेज दिए, किसकी है, कौन सा थीम है, उसकी टैगलाइन क्या होनी चाहिए, क्या डिटेल है ना, आपने अपनी डिटेल भेजी है। कईयों ने तो फोटोज के नाम पर अपनी फोटोग्राफ भेज दी है सेल्फी खींच करके। तो
ठीक है, we've lost your audio, Mr. Jaiswal. So okay, so I'm going to take it from there. What we're going to do today is we're going to see how we can improve on our photography. We're going to see how to really think in photography terms so that your photos will be better. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen and we'll take it from there. Okay, remember, I will answer your questions towards the end of this session. Yes, Mr. Jaisal. Okay, I will proceed. Okay, so what we have today is some photography techniques. Okay, now I'm going to just give me a minute. Very loud. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, sorry about that. Let's continue. Okay, so even though you may already be familiar, I'm just going to take you through some tricks and techniques with regard to common areas that you will use on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so we will go quickly through this, and if you have any questions, you can ask later. So, like we just saw in landscape photography, okay. Will someone stop scribbling, please? Okay, in landscape photography, we have what you call, as we saw, you need to have everything in focus. Okay, so make sure that you have proper elements in your picture. So here are two examples of landscape photography where you have important elements of the landscape and the sky, which are prominent, and we are using the sun, which is partly hidden in the clouds, to get the effect that we need. Okay. Also on the right hand side, we are using something called atmosphere, that is the mist in the air, which is being caught by the sun and giving a kind of golden glow to this image. All right. So keep in mind that using light in a proper way is very important to your photography. Okay? So on that note, let me just talk about light. Okay? Now here's something very important which you need to keep in mind when you're doing photography, because if you see in every photo, what is the one thing which is present in every photo that you take? If it's not present, you don't have a photo, and that is light. So the quality of the light that is in your image is definitely going to show and uh, have an effect, on your people, or on the whoever's viewing the image. Now you need to understand light. If you don't, then you're not going to go very far in photography. So if you look at nature, okay, very early in the morning, you have a kind of, after it stops getting dark, and when it starts getting bright, you have something called the bluish kind of light in the sky, and that is called the blue hour. Okay? And after that, the sun starts rising, so you have dawn. Then you have sunrise, you have early morning, late morning, and afternoon. So this picture grading that you see on the screen is showing you the color of the light at that point of time in the day. So after afternoon, it goes from right to left. Okay. So you have the light again changing towards the evening, becoming yellow, orangish, reddish, and finally blue again, and then black. Okay. So please remember this. This is very important. And if these are the timings, or what we call the golden hour and blue hour, when you will get the best possible pictures, especially city landscapes, seascapes. Okay, if you like nature, then, and especially landscapes, you will get excellent pictures during golden hour and the blue hour. So now here we have the horizon. So as the sun comes over the horizon, the first 6 degrees the sun is up is what we call the golden hour. Oh, and as we see here, the golden hours is this light between sunrise and early morning, okay? Especially just after sunrise. And the blue hour is the time before sunrise and after sunset. So it lasts for a very short period of time, maybe 30 minutes or so. So you have to wait and keep taking pictures. and see when you can actually see the blue in your picture after you take it. Okay, so that's the time when you will get the best possible picture. We will see some references of that as we go ahead. So this is twilight. So there is astronomical twilight, there is nautical twilight, there is civil twilight. Okay? So just in case you are looking up at these information about this, this is what it means really. It is the position of the sun below the horizon or up or above the horizon. Okay? So keep that in mind. One very important thing about photography is that your subject, okay, should be lit well. It should be in proper light. Okay? So the light falling on the subject is called incident light, and the light that is reflected off the subject is called reflected light. Okay? That reflected light is what your camera sees, unless your camera is photographing the light source itself. Okay? So keep this in mind, reflected light and incident light. Okay? So there is a meter, an electronic meter that people use to measure how much light is being coming on the subject or reflected off the subject. Okay? And accordingly, the setting on your camera can be done, because this handheld meter will tell you what settings to put on your camera, and then you will get the right exposure on your camera. So that is good when you are in a studio or doing any portrait work where it's a controlled environment and you have time to do all that. But when you're shooting landscapes, okay, or out in nature, nature is not going to wait for you. Clouds will appear, disappear, they will move. So light also comes off like the very late in the evening. You'll get that nice golden glow, reddish glow, but it doesn't last long. So you have to be ready to get the shot. Okay, which means that you have to be very patient and wait for the right light to appear and get the shot. So here is the importance of light, as we talked about. So here are some very nice images which are using light very effectively to tell the image, to tell the story. Okay? So the one on the left-hand side is in Venice, and if you know, Venice is a city of all canals and is built on the sea. And so anyone who looks at this picture will know immediately that this is Venice. Firstly, from the kind of boat. Secondly, from the kind of houses that are there, the architecture, and also the striped T-shirt worn by the person who is running the boat. Okay? So these things all tell the story very well. And the story is, the focus right now is on that boatman rather than anything else, as you can see, because that is the play of light. Or rather, it has been processed in this way so that you can see the play of light in that, and it makes it very effective. Okay? So that is the light coming through the doorway. So here also on the bottom, you have the man with the cow. And this is called side light, where you have uh, uh, nicely hitting the person and the cow, and you can see how big the cow is compared to the person. So a nice story here, nice light, a lot of texture, and it's well processed. On top, you have what you call a setup scene, which many of the photography clubs do. And so these people are made to walk in line. And of course, as you can see, it is shot in side light. And because it's shot in side light, you have the shadows coming from the side. And of course, it has been processed in a way to add drama to the sky and the sand itself. So what is important here is the direction of the light, number one, from which side the light is coming, and secondly, the quality of the light. Okay? So if we take at the next frame here, you see, take a look at the next frame here, you will see the play of shadow and light. And as you can see, if you had to just put a big light in this room and put it on, you would not get these shadows. These shadows are only possible because of the side light that is entering, and the intensity of the shadows is increasing as the light falls off. Okay, so remember that if you are shooting structures like this, make sure you go at a time when it is not noon, and when the doorways of this place are facing the side light of the sun which could be either in the evening or early morning. Okay. So plan your trip accordingly if you're going to such locations. Okay. Nothing happens by magic. Everything happens with planning. Now we come to something which is very important, I think, especially when you are gauging a scene. Okay. So if you are gauging a scene, and if you want to know exactly what, or rather how it will look in the camera itself. See, we as people, we have two eyes. The reason why we have two eyes, because we see things in 3 dimensions. Your camera has only one eye and it sees things in 2 dimensions. Okay? So if you want to really see, like for example, very often you will say, okay, I look at the scene, it looks very nice. But what happens is that you will see that in some way, when you take the picture, it really doesn't look the same as it looked when you saw it through your own eyes. The reason being the difference between 3D and 2D. Okay? So how do you gauge a scene? By how it will look in camera itself. Okay? Now each one of us has got a dominant eye. The dominant eye is normally the eye through which we look through the viewfinder of the camera. Okay? If you don't know which is your dominant eye, close one eye and look, then close the other eye and look. Whichever one looks better, that is your dominant eye. Okay? So when you're looking at a scene, close one of your eyes and look. That is how your picture is going to look in the camera. So that is one tip you can use to make sure that you get what you want in your camera. Now, this is a very, very important thing in photography, that your photo should tell the story. Okay? You need not explain to someone, oh, this is a picture and this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. But just by looking at the picture, the person who's looking at it should get the story. Now, when you look at a picture like this, you get the story about someone who is very poor, does not have money to buy shoes. He's using shoes that have been worn out already, not even new. And to make them look like sandals, the person has cut the front part out. So there's a lot of story, well shot, a lot of emphasis given to the real thing, and what is not required is out of the frame. Okay. So this is an award-winning picture. So just so that you know that this is the kind of quality your picture should have. Okay. So it must tell the story. What is not part of the story should not be in the image. Anticipate the moment. So what this means here is that you need, what is the story behind this picture? The story behind this picture is that these polar bears feed on these seals. Okay? And what happens is there is a layer of ice over the lake, over the water, a thick layer of ice. Now these seals, they need air or oxygen to breathe. Okay? So what these bears do is they go and they make a hole in the ice right up to the water below, and they wait near the hole outside. The moment the seal comes up for a breath of air, they catch it and they eat it. Now this photographer knew about this behavior and he waited and he got this picture. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get pictures like this. So if you anticipate, if you know the behavior pattern of whatever you're shooting, maybe landscapes or animals or whatever, if you understand behavior, you will be able to capture very good pictures. The next thing is to capture the moment. Okay. Now, the first picture is a very, very difficult picture to get. These are all award-winning pictures. Very, very difficult picture to get, because probably this maybe have been taken by chance, where this person may have been underwater filming something and his camera may be in that direction, at which time this kingfisher came and took this fish. It's a fantastic picture, very difficult to get. So this is getting it by chance, but it was captured very well. I don't know whether this person used multiple frames to get the picture or he got it at one shot, But generally for such kind of pictures, you need to shoot in burst mode. Keep on clicking at very, very fast. Okay, so some of your cameras have this burst mode or high speed mode where you can shoot multiple frames at a time and you will get the image. The second one also, the second image is similar, where you can see that the defeat on this man's face and the victory behind there. So these are images that tell the story and they're captured just at the right moment. So keep that in mind when you're making your own pictures. Okay? Now, a picture like this where you can see a fight between the eagle and the snake. Okay? These are only possible when you shoot in burst mode. If you're not shooting in burst mode, you have to be a very, very lucky person to get the exact moment like this. So as you can see, the mouth of the bird is open, the snake's mouth also is open. Fantastic picture. So the person has watched this thing and kept shooting continuously till he or she got the frame. Okay. So shoot in burst mode. Pictures like these are set up. Okay. So as you can see, none of the natives are going to dress up like this and go to the mountains unless they're asked to. So this is shot in Mongolia, and generally you can pay these poor people and they will dress up for you, and they have these birds with them which they domesticate. And so this person was made to sit with the bird in hand. Person has framed the shot and then asked the person to release the bird, and that's how you've got this picture. Okay, so this is the setup scene. So if you want good pictures, most of the time you'll have to set up the scene. Okay. So here is an example of framing. Okay, this is a composition technique where you can frame something inside something. So as you can see, the two fishermen in the middle are framed by the two fishermen in the front, and the two fishermen right at the back are framed again in the second set. And again, there are two more fishermen who are framed between the legs of the first fisherman in the front. Okay, there is motion in this picture where you can see the water splashing as they walk. So obviously this person has taken his time, sat in a place where he has sat down. So again, he has made sure that he has got the right eye angle for the shot. Okay, very well composed. Look at the horizon. There are boats. Everything is clear and nice. So this is also an award-winning picture. So see, look at all this clarity. Look at the framing, etc. It tells the story very well. So keep that in mind when you're making images. Okay. Now here is an image of a caterpillar, okay, which has been shot in the early hours of the morning when there is already dew on the caterpillar. Okay. And this person is a very good photographer, macro photographer, has taken this picture keeping in mind the droplets. And as you know that each of these droplets acts like a lens and it will reflect what is behind. So what this person has done is this person has put a peacock feather in the background. And that is why you can see the peacock feather being reflected in those small droplets of water. So again, another award-winning image. Look at the light in this image. Okay, probably it was flashed. Okay, that's why the light is excellent. So I've shown at the side some of the gear that is used to get shots like this. Okay. Another technique to get out of the way pictures is to use what you call a reverse lens technique, where you get attachments where you can fit the lens in reverse on your camera. So what happens is a wide angle lens becomes a super macro lens, okay? Because it does the opposite. So as you can see in the case of a wide angle lens, all the picture is taken from very wide and brought to a very small area. So in this case, when you reverse it, a very small area is made very big. Okay? So that's how images like this are got. It is difficult to do, but takes a lot of practice. But you will get excellent pictures like this. So if you can't afford a very expensive macro lens, you can use one of your normal lenses or wide angle lenses, reverse it, and shoot with that. Here's an area where you can see clearly how color contrast makes a picture more effective. Okay, so basically, if you take a look at both the images, you can see that the one I've added a basic black and white image on the right hand side of the same image on the left hand side. So as we discussed yesterday, in this case, you can see, if you remember, that the opposite color of red is cyan. Okay? The opposite color of blue is yellow. So you can see these opposite colors here and how they play out very well. So this is a good example of using color contrast in your image. So here are some tips which you can use when you are shooting handheld. Now, please remember, your shutter speed is very important when you are shooting handheld images, especially when you are a beginner, when you're not really, your hands are not very steady and you're not used to the gear. Okay. So make sure you have a good shutter speed. A decent shutter speed for beginners is 1/100th of a second. Also, make sure if you're using a DSLR or other cameras, make sure that your shutter speed is greater than or equal to your focal length. So what this simply means is that suppose you're shooting at 200 mm, then your shutter speed should be at least 1/200th of a second. 1/200th of a second. If you're shooting at 50 mm, 1/50th of a second is enough. Okay. All right. So another way you can steady your shot when you're hand holding your camera is to hold your breath before pressing the shutter button. Another way is to stick your elbows into your ribs and hold the camera so that there is not much shake when you're shooting. Another tip is to widen your stance. That means put your feet apart, maybe one in front of the other, so that your body is stable and there's less camera shake. And lastly, when you're pressing the shutter button, make sure that you squeeze the button and not just directly press it. So when you squeeze it gradually, you will find that there is a less shake in your camera. So all this is applicable also with your mobile phone. Okay, so keep that in mind. So these are some tips for your handheld shooting. All right. So the next thing is basically you have to make sure that your exposure is right. Number one. Number two, or most importantly, is the focus should be correct. Now the focus of your camera should, or your mobile phone, whatever you're using, should be on the subject itself. Now in the first picture, the first image here, the subject is that droplet of water on the tip of the pencil. So the focus has to be there first. So you focus and then make sure your exposure is right by using whichever metering technique you like. And then you compose the image. Okay. So then you make sure that the pencil on the left-hand side and there's a little gap on the right, etc., etc. So the composition of framing of your shot should be last. That doesn't make sense if you compose a very good picture and it is out of focus and the exposure is bad. Common sense will tell you all, but common sense is not very common today. All right, so keep that in mind. Also, make sure that, like we discussed in the picture today, and when we started off this session, make sure that your focus is on the eye of the subject. When you're talking about living subjects like animals, people, and stuff like that, make sure that your focus is on the eye. Okay. Now you can focus your camera between the dark part and the white part of the eye, and that will help. If you try to focus only on the black part, it may be difficult because your camera needs a little contrast to focus. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. Secondly, make sure that you are at the eye level of the subject. That is okay when you're shooting portraits and stuff like that. But when you're out in the field, especially if you're on safari, that is a little difficult because you can't get out of the jeep. So then you try to take a long shot. When you take a long shot, generally the subject will be always at eye level. But once the subjects come closer to you and you can't bend down, then you will have that difference between the eye level. Okay. So when you're on safari, you can take a long shot, and most probably you will have the animal at eye level. Okay. So keep this in mind. Focus on the eyes and stay at the eye level. Okay. Especially for children, when you're shooting pictures of children, you will get very good images when you go down to their level and shoot. So master the exposure triangle to make sure that your exposures are proper. Okay. Person now, please mute your your. Okay. So also the very important thing is to pre-visualize and pre-focus. So what does this mean? Pre-visualize means you should be very clear in your mind what you want first before you actually go and shoot. Doesn't make sense just pointing your camera at something and shooting and then say, oh, I got this. No. You decide, okay, I want a picture of this flower, but I don't like this angle. I want a different angle. Why? Because the background is disturbing. With this angle of the flower, the background is white, but with that angle of the flower, I'm getting a nice green background. So you first decide what you want. Then you place yourself accordingly. Then you focus, expose, frame your shot, and take it. Okay. Sometimes you have to pre-focus. What that means is that, let's say you want to shoot a car which is going to be racing past you. Let's say you're shooting racing cars. And you want to shoot it when it's racing past you. Now, racing cars have a particular line or a track on which they run. So they're not going to go haywire. They're going to run in that same place. So you can anticipate that the racing car is going to come at this point, and I'm going to shoot it at this point. So what you do is you focus your camera at that point and wait. So, and be ready with your shutter button. As soon as you see that the car is close by, you start clicking in rapid fire and you will get your picture. Because if you try to focus on a speeding car, you'll never get the picture. We use the same technique when we are shooting weddings, events, where we know that the people are going to come in that area. So we pre-focus and we shoot. So that's how we get the shots. Because in weddings, what happens if you want to get that emotion, by the time you on the person's face, by the time you focus, it's lost. You will not be able to get the picture. Okay? So pre-focusing and pre-visualization or pre-composition is very important. So very often when we are doing weddings and events, I already have my camera focused and ready, knowing that something is going to happen in this area and I'm ready to shoot. That's how you get those very nice pictures. Okay, so keep that in mind. So use a wider aperture for portraits to make your subjects pop. So in this case, this girl has been shot at a wide aperture. Why? Because you can see, how do we know? Because if you look at this girl's image here, you will see that the eyes are in focus. Okay, look at the back of the hair, it's not in focus. Okay, look at the back of the dress, it's not in focus. Okay, so you have just the front of the face, maybe from the tip of the nose to the eyes, and maybe a little part of the ears, which are in focus, and the rest of it is not in focus. So wider aperture means an aperture number like 1.4, 1.8, 2.8. If your camera doesn't have 2.8, shoot at 5.6. Okay, but to get that effect with 5.6, make sure you have a large focal length. So shoot at 100, 200, above 70, you will get a decent kind of blurring in the background. Okay, so prevent blurry pictures by, we have already discussed that. Make sure your shutter speed is greater than or equal to the focal length of the image. So like today we said, make sure that you straighten the picture and crop when you are editing. Okay, so make sure that your horizon should be straight. It should not be tilting to the left or right. It should be perpendicular, very straight, okay, very parallel, very straight. So make sure that, and that is one of the hallmarks of any professional image. So if your image, if you claim to be a professional photographer and your image is showing a horizon which is tilted, it's a very bad sign, okay. Secondly, make sure that you can steady your camera. Okay. Now, when do you need to steady the camera? You need to steady the camera when you're shooting something where you need a decent shutter speed. Okay. Or in a place where you know you want to get the best possible shot. For example, let's say you are shooting in a restaurant where the lighting is very low. Okay, where the lighting is very low and you want to get a good picture without noise. So in that case, you can use a small tabletop tripod like this, put your camera on it, make sure your ISO is at the lowest. Okay, choose an aperture depending on the subject you're shooting, and then don't worry about the shutter speed because the camera is not going to shake on this tripod. And then you can get a nice, good, clean image even in low light. Okay. When you're shooting videos, it's very good because it will not shake the video. And the one on the right is what we call a remote shutter release, which you can use when you place your camera on a tripod. Okay. So what happens is, even though you place it on a tripod, when you press the button on the camera, it will shake. So in order to avoid that, you can use a remote shutter release, which may be a wired release, but maybe a wireless release, like in this case, where you can click the picture without actually touching the camera. So this will avoid shake with the camera. So these are some things which are quite useful. And I always use that when I go shooting, especially landscapes, so that I get the sharpest possible image. So make use of reflections. Like we saw some examples today of some of you have clicked nice reflection photos. Okay. So also make sure that you have the whole reflection in your image. Okay. So using a reflection adds a lot of dimension to the picture. It makes it more interesting. Okay. So reflections may not necessarily be mirror reflections. Like you can see in the first image, it is a partial reflection. The second image is like a complete reflection. Third one, complete reflection. Fourth one is a reflection of the beautiful sky. Okay, very partial, but still effective. Okay. So these are pictures which are nice pictures, which show a lot of texture, a lot of pattern. And so make use of reflections in your image. So we'll see some tricks of how to do that a little later. So we talked about golden hour and we talked about blue hour. Blue hour is the time when the sun just sets, after the sun sets and before it gets dark, you'll get this blue sky coming in your picture. You may not see it with your eye, but it will be registered on your sensor, the camera. And the golden hour is the time just after sunset or before, just after sunrise and just before sunset. Okay. As you can see, the color, the orangish, yellowish color, which really makes your landscape images or any other image pop. So most of the people who are selling excellent landscape images, who have got very good profiles using landscape images, are people who only shoot in the golden hour. Once it gets late, they go to sleep and they come back when it's golden hour again. Okay. So make sure you use good quality of light and direction of light to get good images in your photographs. Right. Now, here is an example in the first case of using a reflector. So a reflector is nothing but a shiny material that you use to reflect the light. Now, why would you want to do that? You want to do that because you don't have a flash, or you want to use it along with a flash, and you want to light up your subject with the light. So if you've seen any film shooting, you will see that they have a lot of reflectors which are taking the light from various places and putting it on the entire scene. Why? Because they want to have the best quality image without noise and having a good shutter speed so that they can shoot the image. So very often you will also find people using either a silver gold or a silver white or a white gold mixed kind of uh, 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 reflector with their portraits. And you will see a reflection of that in the eye of the person, okay, which also looks nice. So sometimes they put a reflector under the chin or below the face of the person, whereas there's a light on top which reflects that into the eyes uh, of the subject. So there are different colors. If you want a neutral shade, you can get white. If you want a kind of shiny effect, you can use silver. If you want a nice glowing warm effect, you can use golden. You can use black to cut the light, and you can use translucent if you want to cut the light partially. Okay? So there are different reflectors that you can use along with maybe the flash, or to reflect the sunlight, or to block the sunlight on your subject. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is memory cards. Okay. Memory cards are very important. Now, very often I have people coming and telling me there is something wrong with my camera. So what's wrong? Saying, oh, it's very slow. I said, how? What do you mean by very slow? No, after I take one picture, it takes very long. Then after some time, I can take the picture. Otherwise, I have to wait. Why do you have to wait? Because the speed of the card that you're using is very slow. So if you're into DSLR photography, or if you're into taking pictures which are high resolution and you want to take a very fast frame rate, you have to make sure that the memory cards that you're using are of a high speed. Okay. So these ones which have number 10, ultra, extreme, okay, these are fast cards. So your camera does not have to wait, and you can take pictures in quick succession. So these are examples of different types of cards which are being used today. The one on the right bottom corner, the CF Express, is the latest format of these cards, which are available in the latest cameras. So that's something you need to keep in mind. So remember, your card is very important. And also the brand that you use is very important. So use a good quality brand of card. Don't buy the cheap cards because they get spoiled and you will lose your images which are on that. Okay? So make sure, if you're a professional and you intend to be a professional, or you want to make sure that your photos remain safe, buy a brand which is a good brand. Okay, so Lexa, SanDisk, Sony, these are good brands and reliable brands. So get a filter to protect each lens from scratches. So one very popular filter which is used on lenses, especially DSLRs, is called an ultraviolet lens, or filter, or a UV filter. So what it does, basically, it's a blank kind of glass, and it cuts a little bit of ultraviolet light. Okay, it makes no difference to your image. So make sure you buy a good quality one, because the cheaper ones will give you a slight color cast. So also, this glass in front of your lens protects the main lens glass. So the main lens glass is very, very, very expensive. So if you scratch that or something happens to that, you lost it. So there are lenses which are very expensive, like there are 1.5 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakhs, 6 lakhs for each lens. Okay. So again, there is a big debate of whether to use it or not to use it. From a safety point of view, it is better to use a UV filter on your lens to protect your lens. So from all the elements of nature, like dust, water, snow, whatever, okay? Especially salt. So these lenses are not, these filters are not expensive. So if something happens to the filter, you can buy a new one at a low cost and your job is done. Use white balancing tools. So if you're very particular about the colors in your image, then you use a white balancing tool like a gray card, like is shown here. So by using a gray card, you can later use the processing software to tell and use this in the scene so that you can accordingly get the right colors in the picture. Okay. You can look that up on the net because there's no time to get into the details of this, but make sure you use a gray card, especially if you want the right color in your image. Now, the white balance setting in your camera is important to make sure you don't get a color cast in your image. Okay. Now, sometimes the color cast is required. For example, if you're shooting in the evening, okay, like the first picture here, as you can see, there is side light coming from the right hand side, which means that is nearing sunset. When it's nearing sunset, the image needs to be a little warm. Okay. Now, this image was shot with 4500 Kelvin. Kelvin is a measure of the color of your light. Okay. So the larger this number, okay, as you can see, the bluer the light, and the smaller the number, the yellower the light. Okay. So you can adjust the white balance settings in your camera to get a different effect straight away in camera with your picture. So no need to process. If you want to directly get it done in camera, set the white balance accordingly, and your camera will accordingly adjust the picture for you. So here is 7000K, 7500K, 5750K, and 4500K, and you can see the color difference in the same picture. So here we have one very important element. At least I need to take a lesson from that, is I shoot most of my pictures in landscape format. Okay. So very often people ask for pictures in portrait format. That means vertical format, not horizontal format. So people, if you want your pictures to be published on magazines, in magazines, on posters, etc., mostly they will require pictures which are shot vertically. Okay, so like the one on the right. So use that, and as you can see, we're using the golden hour to get that effect in the picture. Secondly, and these three pictures on the left hand side, you can see that changing your perspective will give you better results. Okay, like for example, now this boy is looking up. It's a very unusual shot where the person is looking up and you're directly above vertically over the person. So it makes a difference in the shot. Okay, look at the angle at which the buildings and the trees are shot, so that there's a conversion. So it adds interest to the image. So change your position. Very often where you're standing may not be the ideal position. So experiment. Take a shot here, take a shot there, take a shot from some other place, take a shot from a different angle. Okay. So use the 360-degree rule where you turn around vertically, and if possible, change your perspective vertically in different ways so that you can see the same subject from different points of view, and you'll be surprised by the kind of results that you get. So in most cases, don't use your built-in flash because it's a very small source of light and very harsh light. Okay. So mostly you will not get a very good shot with this small flash. If you want to use this small flash, I suggest you put a small tissue over it so that it diffuses the flash and it is not so harsh. Secondly, this kind of small flash or any other flash comes useful when you're shooting outdoors, especially at noon time. Okay. Like this picture here is shot when the sun is very close to the vertical center on top. So this may be something like 11 o'clock in the morning, where it is vertically up and there is a slight side shadow. And as you can see, the subject's eyes are dark and the area below the nose is dark and is casting a bad shadow and not looking very nice. In that case, you can use your flash and shoot. As you can see on the right hand side, it has filled in those shadows and is giving much better picture than on the left hand side. Okay. So if you don't want these unnecessary shadows, you can use flash even in the sun to avoid that. Okay. So most people find it counterintuitive. They think, oh, why use the flash in the sun when it's already so bright? Primarily to reduce the shadows. Okay, so keep that in mind. So again, like we discussed yesterday, learn to use the histogram to see the exposure in your image. And if you find that your picture is either too dark or light, you can use the exposure compensation option, which is available on your phones or your camera. And you can accordingly adjust the exposure that you're getting without changing any of the other settings in your camera. So this is a quick fix method. We can immediately add some more light or reduce some more light that is coming into your image. Okay? So that is by using this exposure compensation button. Okay, so keep that in mind. Another thing is to fill the frame. Okay, so if you remember the cat picture that we saw earlier today, okay, it was touching the edges of the frame. Okay, so here, as you can see, there's a nice border around the subject, which is empty. So the subject stands out. And in this frame, it is only about the fox. So it is like a portrait of the fox itself. Nothing else is there. So it is very clean, clear, focus on the eyes, etc. Nice picture. In the second picture below also, it's about this flower, and I have used enough depth of field to show all the elements of this flower without showing any of the background. So as you can see, it is clear. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. And I fill the frame. So there's nothing else but the flower in this frame. So this is called filling the frame. So if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. So that's one of the quotes by one of the famous photographers. And traffic trail lights. So you can use these. So in order to get pictures like this on the right-hand side, you need to have a long exposure. How long? Enough to get a streak of light. Okay. So now in this case, there are red and yellow lights. Okay. So it seems like there was one car which passed one way and the other car that came the other way. The one which came the other way is showing yellow lights. The one went the other way is showing the red light, the back lights. So this exposure has been long enough to record this trail of light in these cars. Okay. And you have to use a tripod for something like this, because otherwise, if your hand shakes, all these lines are going to get wavy and the picture is going to get blurred. So for these kind of pictures, you must use a tripod. Okay. Similarly here, this is a picture of the bus which has passed by, or the tram which has passed by. Mostly it will be the bus because there are prime lines here. And these are the lights left by the bus after it has been shot. Okay. So it's easy to get these pictures. You only need to make sure that you've got the right composition, got the right speed, slow speed, and make sure that your camera is on a tripod. Okay. So we'll take a 5-minute break here and we'll meet up again after 5 minutes. Okay. So take a short break.
Okay, Brenda. In the meanwhile, I would like to show something about our organization, that is the Photographic Society of India.
इसका फोन का मॉड्यूल जाने के पापा
तो जब तक अभी ब्रेक चल रहा है, आप लोगों को मैं एक फीडबैक फॉर्म दे रहा हूँ। ये फीडबैक फॉर्म रजिस्ट्रेशन जिन्होंने किया है उनके लिए है। चैट बॉक्स में आप देख सकते हैं, इसको आप 1-2 मिनट लगेगा, आप इसको फिल कर दें। सर्टिफिकेट के लिए हम इसके बाद जब सेशन खत्म हो जाएगा, इसके बाद हम जो सर्टिफिकेट के लिए फीडबैक फॉर्म है वो अलग से देंगे। मैं आप सबको बता दूं कि मंदसौर विश्वविद्यालय का जनसंचार एवं पत्रकारिता विभाग आने वाले दिनों में 6 मंथ की फोटोग्राफी सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स लॉन्च करने जा रहा है, जिसमें 6 मंथ हम फोटोग्राफी भी सीखेंगे और 6 मंथ का ही एक और कोर्स है, सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स, जो फिल्म मेकिंग पर है। तो अगर आप उसके साथ जुड़ना चाहते हैं, उसके बारे में कोई भी जानकारी चाहते हैं, तो आप हमें ईमेल कर सकते हैं। हमारे नंबर, कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर भी आपके पास हैं। एडमिशन हमने ओपन कर दिए हैं, और ये अच्छी बात है कि PSI जो फोटोग्राफी सोसाइटी ऑफ इंडिया है, उसके साथ मिल करके हम ये कोर्स लॉन्च करेंगे आने वाले दिनों में। तो आप सबके लिए ये एक अच्छा मौका रहेगा, और अच्छी बात यह है कि जो लगभग 6 मंथ का जो समय है वो भी ऑनलाइन ही चलने वाला है। तो आप सबके पास ये एक अच्छा मौका रहेगा कि आप हमसे जुड़ें। एक सर्टिफिकेट आपके फ्यूचर में भी काम आएगा। सर्टिफिकेट से ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है कि आप उन लोगों से सीख पाएंगे जो ऑलरेडी इस फोटोग्राफी की दुनिया में मुकाम हासिल कर चुके हैं, जैसे कि ब्रेंडन सर हो गए, और ये बहुत सारे जो स्पीकर्स हैं वो हमने, राजेंद्र सर हमारे PSI के जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी हैं, इन्होंने लाइंड अप कर रखे हैं। तो आप हमसे जुड़िए। जुड़ने के लिए हमने फीडबैक लिंक भी दे दिया है, हमारे कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर भी आपके पास हैं। तो आप हमसे जुड़े रहिए और फोटोग्राफी की दुनिया में एक अपना मुकाम बनाइए। एक छात्र जीवन में रहते हुए डिफरेंट फील्ड के आप लोग हैं, कोई साइंस का है, कोई आर्ट का है, कोई कोई कह रहे कोई जॉब भी कर रहा है, तो उसके लिए भी फोटोग्राफी में कहीं रोक टोक नहीं है। वो कोई भी व्यक्ति फोटोग्राफी सीख सकता है। अब आप देख सकते हैं कि हमारे राजेंद्र सर को इस उम्र में भी फोटोग्राफी पर एक अच्छा फोटोग्राफी की दुनिया में मुकाम हासिल कर रहे हैं सर। आप देखिए ब्रेंडन सर को देखिए, एक अपना 20 साल का अनुभव उनका है खुद का। तो स्कोप बहुत है, और इस स्कोप को आप समझने की आपको जरूरत है। और अब तो ऐसा समय आ गया है, कोविड हो गया है, कि आप घर बैठ कर के भी सीख सकते हैं। हालांकि प्रैक्टिकल के लिए आपको बाहर निकलना पड़ेगा, लेकिन सिचुएशन तब तक सही हो जाएगी। तो इस टाइम को आप यूज करिए जितना ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हो सके। और मंदसौर विश्वविद्यालय की कोशिश रही है कि कुछ आपको ऐसा प्रोडक्टिव वर्क दे पाए, हम ऐसी प्रोडक्टिव जानकारी दे पाए जो फ्यूचर में आपके काम आए। तो ब्रेंडन सर वापस आ चुके हैं ब्रेक के बाद। तो सर स्वागत है फिर से आपका।
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll take it from you.
ओके।
All right, so to continue, I'm going to go a little quickly so that we can cover a few more things. So make sure that you use patterns in your images, okay, like the one on the left. A pattern is kind of a repetition of something, okay? And as you can see in this image, okay, here you have very good light which is hitting. So you can see there is shadow and light, shadow and light, shadow and light in different areas. And the texture also has been brought out on this. On the left hand side, you can see this image has been shot with a side light. And you'll get something similar like this if you stand near the window. Okay, and so use the window, which is a good source of light, and you will be able to get some nice images near the window, or use a side light. So the angle of this light is 45 degrees to the top, from the top coming down, okay, like this. So you will get a nice, so make sure that you position your subject so that the light is enough to illuminate the eye area. So keep that in mind. Now, this is a very important concept in photography, and that is called separation. And you need to make sure that your subject is clearly identified from the background. Okay? So these are some examples where depth of field and light have been used to isolate the subject from the background. So this is called separation. You can see that there's nothing that disturbs any of these pictures from the background. It's clear. That is how your images should be. Okay. So use opposite colors, like in the left-hand side, the opposite of blue is yellow. So, and as you can see in this picture, there's nothing but blue, yellow, and gray. So this makes it powerful color contrast. And in this case, there is a lot of texture, a lot of things happening here, and a lot of what you call geometry in your picture. So I've used the geometry in this picture to show a triangle, big triangle, smaller triangle, and stuff like that. There's a reflection. The reflection is perfectly still because it's early morning. So I went to this place at about 5 o'clock or something like in the morning. And I forced myself into this place, and I got this picture. It's very difficult to get this picture. All right. Now the one on the right-hand side is an award-winning picture in Nat Geo. And you can see the use of longer shadows, or what you call side light. So where you can actually see the whole camel, that is a shadow. And the actual camel you can see is like just a straight line kind of thing. So this is a very good image, and you can see the texture of the ground, etc., and the desert with the camel. So long shadows can be used. So remember, long shadows are quite effective if they're used properly. Also notice that the diagonal composition. So this is diagonal composition, which makes it more powerful and makes it very active. Okay? So keep that in mind. So here is an example of using, like if you're doing portraits on the street, you can't have a power connection there. So use a battery powered LCD. So maybe a light stick or a battery powered flash. Okay? Which people are using now and getting pictures and posting on Facebook, Instagram, etc., to promote their products. Okay. So on location shooting, this is some kind of equipment which is going to be very useful for you. I use a light stick when I shoot my weddings, especially for the bride, because our Indian houses are very small. You can't set up a light, etc. This is very compact, a light stick. Okay. So you can use one of those. So this is how it looks like behind the scenes, where they're using a battery operated flash, and they're using it very well to get the kind of image that you see on the right hand side. So this is behind the scenes, what it actually looks like to get images like this. So you have features in your camera like using multiple exposures. So this is shot by world famous, left hand side one is shot by McNally, one of the famous photographers, using a flash. Okay, so basically he has taken 3 exposures. What happens is the dark area of your image is used for the next image and the next image. Okay, so this is how this image has been shot. 3 exposures on the same frame. So this is called multiple exposures. So you can experiment with that. One on the right hand side also. So the first shot has been taken of this person as a silhouette, and the next shot has been taken with the background in focus. Okay, and shot now. Of course, this is a photoshopped one, but you can get something similar like this in your camera itself. right, so this we have taken a look at yesterday. Now look at it. Another very important thing is leading lines. How your eye moves through the image. In the first case, your eye moves from left to right. In the second case, the Willman, and the third case, and also the fourth case, your eye moves from the bottom of the frame into the frame. So the idea of your picture should be that the person who's looking at a picture should look at the entire frame. And these lines help to direct the eye towards the subject. Notice that all these things are leading to something interesting. Okay, so if you're using leading lines, make sure that it leads to something interesting. Otherwise, there's no point. So to get pictures like this, you have to be persistent and patient. Okay, these are two things which are very, very essential for any photographer. You must have patience and you must persist. You can't give up immediately. You won't get good shots. So here is a wildlife photo where the person has waited for a long time for the bird to come. So these are oxpeckers which go and clean up the animal. They go and dig out all the bugs from the ear and all that. So this one is like hovering and waiting for a time to get what it wants. So look at the expression of the animal, look at the expression of the bird, look at how the composition has been made, beautifully made. It takes time, patience to get shots like this. All right, so now to end this session, I'm going to show you how people get shots. Okay, so this is, of course, behind the scene, showing you that a picture like this, which looks so real, is actually what is on the right-hand side here. So if you take a look here on the right-hand side, you will see that this person has used the table, has used model cars, and has integrated the table along with the background in such a way that the cars really look real and they actually look the right size according to the image. So beautifully done. This is how you get pictures like these. So this is called behind the scenes. Here's another scene where the person is using reflections. Okay, you can see the photographer taking the camera really low. Okay, see, this is what I'm talking about, the angle at which you shoot. Very, very important. Okay, so it's got the couple, got the reflection also of the castle. Beautiful picture. Here's another example of what I call jugaad. Okay, as you can see the setup there, laptop, paper. Okay, the person is not using water, they're using glycerine because the glycerine drop will stay there for some time. The water will fall off. And because in the reflection that shows in the droplet is always upside down, the person has put the picture upside down on the laptop so that it looks straight in the actual image itself. And because of using a shallow depth of field, the person has been able to blur out the background and get just the picture of the couple in that droplet. So here is the setup and here is the effect. So very, very informative and very nice for your use. Here again is behind the scenes. As you can see how people get images. Everything is set up and the picture is taken. Okay? So this is what I say, that you frame, pre-focus, pre-visualize, pre-frame your image and wait till the effect is done and then with good preparation. So these are the famous levitation shots where people are flying or above the ground, and this is how it's done. Okay, so probably someone was holding the back of the dress and threw it just in time for the picture so that it is floating in the air and the person is balanced on that ladder. Okay, so this is how it's done. This is one example how you can get pictures like this. Now please note that to get pictures like this, you must first take a shot of this whole scene without the subjects. Then you take another shot with the subjects. And then in Photoshop, remove the elements that are not required. In this case, it is the ladder. Okay. Same thing here, behind the scenes. So the person here, the photographer, is throwing water at the back of the bouquet of flowers. The bouquet of flowers has been put on a light stand and made to stand still. And the photograph has been taken using burst mode and high speed. Then only you'll get a picture like this. Okay. So you have to use high speed burst mode with high speed flash also in order to get this kind of image. So as you can see, it's very beautiful. And the background has been added afterwards because, or rather it must have been already there because you can see there's a red spotlight on the left hand side of the second image. This is how images like this are made. I like this image because as you can see, the image on the left hand side here is basically done using a light stick and a long exposure. So as the person moves with the light stick, this kind of effect has been generated. This is the famous burger shot and how it is got. Okay. So on a light stand, they have put different wires, and on each wire they have put each element. And so for the tomato and the other elements, they have used small pieces of glass. Okay. And then they have shot it. And after that, after shooting all these things, they have removed all the other elements in Photoshop. And that's how you have been able to get a picture like this. Okay. So this is that split kind of burger scene. Again, there's a levitation photo. Okay. Please be careful when you try something like this. If the stand breaks, the person will break their back. Please be very, very careful. Please remember, whenever you're doing any type of photography, safety comes first. Photos are not important, especially when you're taking selfies. Safety first. Please keep that in mind. All right. So this is how it has been done. And finally, you have a behind the scenes picture like this. Okay, you would think that it was shot in the snow, but it's done in the studio. There's a backdrop which is there, as you can see, probably lit. So there's a backlight so that the hair shines. Front light on the top, as you can see the angle of the light. And you can see that he's also resting his arms on a computer monitor. And the shot has been taken. Okay. So we have come an end to this techniques part. We don't have more time, otherwise I could have gone through a little more scenes with you. Now, yesterday, some of you had questions about bracketing. So here is this scene, okay, the Buddha scene. And here are the images that were used to make that image. So remember, I told you that I took 9 frames at different exposures. So the one in the middle is the normal exposure. So if you take a picture normally with your camera, it is going to look like the one in the middle here. Okay, as you can see, there are shadows, etc. So what I did was I did bracketing, 4 minus shots. So this is -1 stop, -2 stops, -3 stops, -4 stops, +1 stop, +2 stops, +3 stops, and +4 stops. So as you can see in the first picture, you can have as much detail in the bright parts, and in the last picture you can see you can have as much detail as you want in the shadows. And by integrating all these pictures together, you get a picture like this. Okay. So this is how I got the picture, by using 9 frames. And if you want to get a sunburst like this, all these rays coming from any source that is very bright, maybe it's a light or sun or whatever, you have to use a small aperture. Small aperture means an aperture number like f11, f16, f22. I used f22 in this case to get this shot, okay, because I wanted the sunburst. Okay. So if you want that kind of effect in your image, you have to make sure that you shoot it like that. Now, if you want an an effect like this in your image, okay, this is this is also an HDR image, but you can get a similar effect. So what I did was, in this case, okay, as you can see here, I have placed myself such that only half the sun can be seen. Half the sun was below that wall. But because of the exposure and the way it happened, it looks like the sun is over that wall. Okay. So for shots like this, half of the sun has to be covered, and you have to use an exposure like f22 or something like that to get the sunburst. So talking about dynamic range, yesterday we said that the eye can see 20 stops, but your camera can see only 14 stops. So what do? We take multiple frames. Okay. So for example, in this case, we would take one shot to the left, another shot to cover this area. Okay. Then maybe another shot to cover this area, another shot to cover this area, another shot to cover this area, and so on. This is how the bracketing is done. Different frames, okay, and then you integrate all so that you can see the entire range, the dynamic range in your picture. All right, so I'm going to take questions. Whoever wants to ask questions right now, please go ahead.
Subdeep.
Yes, I had a question because the last day I posted one of my photos for nature's photography to you. And because when we are very close to nature, when we go to places, so there are less amount of obstructions there. But when we are in the city, we right in the middle of the city, there are lampposts, there are a lot of obstructions. So what is the best way that we can do to bring out a
Okay. See, there are different ways to deal with these. These are typical problems that you find when you do travel photography. So what you have to do is, firstly, try to find a proper place where you will get the least amount of obstructions in your photo. Number two, you use a technique called multiple photos. So I will show you now on my screen so that I will be able to explain to you what it is. Okay. Give me a minute, I will get it. Okay, take a look at this picture. This is called the Queen's Staircase in Versailles Palace in France. Now, this is a palace which is visited by hundreds of tourists, and I wanted to get this picture. Now, when I went here, there were people walking on this staircase, and I wanted this picture without people walking on the staircase. So what did I do? I positioned myself in this place, and I took one picture. Now, when that picture was taken, there was one person here. Can you see my cursor?
Yes, sir, I can see.
So one person was here, one person was there, one person was there, and one person was there. So as soon as this first person moved out of place, I took another picture. Then when the other person moved out of that place, I took another picture. I'm still standing at the same place, okay, trying not to move as much as possible. Then when that other place got vacant, I took another picture. And when the other place got vacant, I took another picture. All the time, my camera is in the same place, same position, same focus. I took about 10 photos. And afterwards, I put all these photos into Photoshop and masked out the people. And this is the result what I got. Okay? By taking the blank parts from different parts from different areas of different pictures and put them together. Okay, not easy to do, but this is what most professional travel photographers do in order to get those kind of pictures in their image. Number two is you take the image and afterwards remove the lamppost, wires, etc. in Photoshop.
Okay.
That's how you can manage to, because otherwise you will miss the shot. And so when you're doing travel photography, most of the time you want the shot, and there are always tourists. Okay, and you can't tell people to get out of the way or whatever. Use this technique of multiple shots and then integrate them.
Okay.
So it is a
Right.
kind of stacking method where you can use it for that. Yes, next question, please.
Purva Sharma.
First of all, thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session.
Welcome.
My question is, sir, please guide me on color theory and picture style.
And picture style.
Style.
Yeah. Color theory, you can go to YouTube and just type digital color theory. You'll get a lot of videos which explain very basically what colors are. It shows you color harmonies. Now there is a site called adobe.color. You can go to Adobe Color and it will show you different color harmonies that you can use in your image. So if you're a graphic artist, you can use those color harmonies to get a very good effect. So let me show you on the screen. There is the site called Adobe Color. It's very useful. I use this a lot of time. Okay. So here you can go and you can learn also. It's different analogous, monochrome, triad. So triad uses only 3 colors. So if you move the wheel, it will show you which colors go best together. So if you want to use something with red, you can go there. You can go up and down to change the intensity of the colors. So if you bring it inside, it becomes less intense and more pure, as you can see. There are a lot of these things. We have complementary colors, like I talked about, opposite colors. So you can move that and you can see how you can use this. Very useful tool for that. Okay, so color harmony and a little bit of color things you can learn on this site. Other things you can learn on Facebook itself. All right, next question.
So picture style, please.
Picture style, it depends exactly on your on what you want. See, what happens is all of us who are into photography are artists. Okay. Now, an artist, normally a painter, creates from scratch, takes a blank canvas and puts whatever he wants. We don't have that option. As photographers, we have to take what we are given. Right? The first question. Okay, whatever's there, we have to take it in a particular way so that it looks best. Okay. So after taking the shot, then you make it look like how you want, either in some processing format or whatever. So that is the artist in you. See, every picture that you make, every photo that you make contains a bit of yourself. Who you are is in that image. Okay? Because that is why you take the picture that way. So every element. So for example, if 5 people go to the same place and with the same camera, same equipment and take pictures, all 5 of them will come with different images because they see differently. And even if you give them the same picture and ask them to process it, they will process it differently. So the style in a picture all depends on who you are, what you want, and what you want to portray. Okay. For example, if you want to show a very sad scene, you're not going to show it with very colorful pictures. You're going to show it very dull pictures and stuff like that. So styling will be mostly based on that. Yes. Next.
Brandon, I have one question.
Yes.
Okay, it is regarding holding the camera.
Yes.
They say that our elbow should be tucked to our chest or
Yes.
the ribs.
Yes.
But what happens is when you take a high angle shot, say for the birds
Yes.
or for the moon,
Yes.
so that is really not very practical.
Yes. So what I do is I make sure when you're taking an angle which is up, okay, I make sure that I rest my camera on the top of my eye here. Keep it steady. Okay. So when you're up like this, I rest my camera here and try to keep my head as steady as possible. Because if it's in the air, it will shake. So you can try that.
It goes true for a below eye level shot also. Like when you have to bend, you have to bow.
Yes. When you have to bend, basically it's the same thing. I try to stabilize as much as I can by using my head. Okay, I place the camera in such a way that I can use my head as a support, because once it's free away, then it's going to shake a lot.
Now, regarding this holding the breath, I have tried both.
Yes.
So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
For me, I can't hold my breath, but I just make sure that I squeeze the trigger. I don't press it.
Because I'll tell you, I do macros, especially because sometimes I shoot even below the MFD also. And sometimes I add MFD or slightly beyond MFD.
Yes.
I have seen it. The moment you go very close to the subject, I don't know, automatically your fingers start shaking. Okay, you can feel even before clicking, you can feel the shake.
See, what happens is when you're shooting, especially with macro, it's back-breaking work. If you are shooting macros, I highly recommend that you use a tripod. Sometimes it's not possible, but if you can use a tripod, you'll get fantastic results. But if you are not, make sure you have good shutter speed, good light. So use maybe a flash if you can, and you will get better quality shots. But otherwise, the body shape is very difficult. Yeah.
In macro, I mostly shoot butterflies. There you cannot predict where it will perch, at what level it will perch. You cannot predict. So really, at that time, using a tripod is not very practical.
Yes. Yes, I know what you mean. So use a long lens then, and use a high shutter speed. So you have something like a 2.8 lens with 300 or 200 or something like that, and then it's more working distance with the butterfly.
Yeah. I use Tamron 90 mm with the VC feature.
Please ask only one question in one time.
Okay.
Adilika, please continue.
Yes.
Brendan, there is one more question in the chat box.
Yes.
From
please,
Kripika Garu. I think. One second,
Ethics of photography in sports sector. Is that the question? Ethics of photography in sports sector?
That one, and one about active delighting. How does it work? Active delighting in camera.
See, the ethics, as far as ethics go in photography, the ethics goes basically on two principles. One is on morality, and secondly, on the basis of the organization or association rules. Morality goes as far as you being as a person. Okay, so if you feel that this picture is going to do injustice to the person you are photographing, not right. Number two, when you are talking in terms of associations, most of these people tell you that you can take such photos and you should not take such photos. Okay, so you need to follow the rules. For example, if you do an event photo, photography for an event, they will tell you specifically, do not go on the stage, do not go into that area, make sure you don't disturb the performance, and so on and so forth. The same way in sports photography, you're not allowed to disturb the athletes or people who are in that. So these rules which the association or the place we are shooting will tell you, please don't do these things, and you need to follow that. Other than that, the ethics part of it is make sure that you don't show someone in bad light deliberately. And as far as delighting goes, delighting is a feature of active delighting is a feature of Nikon cameras, where the exposure will get adjusted in such a way that it will try to bring a little more detail in the shadows. So for example, if the shadows are too dark, it will try to lighten the shadows by increasing the exposure a little. So that's what daylighting does. So normally you may want to keep your active daylighting to auto, but if you're only going to shoot dark areas and dark subjects, then you keep active daylighting high if you want detail in the shadows. If you don't want detail in the shadows, you want dark shadows, no detail, then you put active daylighting off. Next.
Anu wants some
please,
tips on portrait photography.
Okay, you want some tips on portrait photography. First tip about portrait photography. What is portrait photography? Let me see, I have a slide on that. So look at these pictures here, okay? So portrait photography or portraiture is a type of photography aimed at capturing the person's personality. The person's personality must come out in the photo. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Then it's not a portrait, it's just a picture of the person. So by looking at that picture, you come to know more about that person. Okay, like various aspects about the personality. The personality of the person must be brought about. See, it says here at the bottom, great photography is about depth of feeling, not depth of feel. So when you look at a picture of this person, this woman, this man, and this child, what is the immediate feeling that you get? When you look at this child, you say how sweet this child is, or how beautiful this woman is, or how you can see how hard this man's life is. By looking at his face, you can see he's wrinkled, he's old, he's still working. This was a vegetable seller in the market. And you can see that he also has an element of style, the way he has worn his turban, the color he has chosen, etc. I've not changed anything in that. So all these things matter. Talks about the person, you can see. And he was not very happy with me taking his picture, so I went very far away and I shot. Okay, so that's about portraiture. Also make sure in portraiture that the hair has got some light on it, okay? And make sure that there is focus on the eye. Also make sure there are catch lights in the eye. Okay? Catch lights are those small white spots that come on the eye from the light source. So these are things, as you can see in this image. I'll try to blow it up for you. See, there is catch light in him also here and in this lady as well. See, catch lights. So these are important things which you need to keep in mind as far as portraits go. Also make sure that you don't have very harsh shadows on the person's face. Okay, there are different types of lighting and stuff like that. We don't have time to go into detail. Also, when you're doing portraits, make sure that the focus or the attention remains on the person's face, not on the clothes. So you may want to instruct your person not to wear very flashy clothes, because then the person will look more at the clothes than the person's face. So as you can see in each of these cases, okay, the clothes are mild, they're subtle, they're not flashy. That is why the prominence is on the face. Also the lighting is very important. Okay, so there are a lot of things in portraiture. You don't have time to look at this, but these are the few things which you can use in your portraiture. Yes.
One more question from chat box. Aman Raj. He's saying I am using Fujifilm X-T3 and from 4 months, and sometime I feel that I have no change my camera and upgrade to Canon because my photos are not so good.
Okay, so the thing is, the best camera in the world is the one which is in your hand. Okay, so I wouldn't suggest you change your camera. I would suggest that you improve your skill in using that camera. Most people don't know how to use the camera that they have. Number one. Number two, they're not following the basic principles of photography. Number three, they're not following the basic principles of composition. And number four is they're not following the basic principles of editing the photo, processing the photo. Once you've done all these things and you still feel your camera is not good enough, then you change to a higher level camera. So I wouldn't suggest you change your camera right now. Try to learn more about your camera, read the manual. I'm sure you will get, I've seen excellent photos from the camera that you're using. So you should be able to improve on your skill. Next.
One more question from Indrakshi M. He's saying, sir, what is the scope of photojournalism? And he's highly interested in the field of photography and photojournalism.
Okay. So, I'll just answer another question quickly. There's someone asking about the best lens to use for portrait. The best lens to use for portraits now is 85 mm 1.4. Okay, it's very expensive. It costs about $1 lakh or $1.5 lakh. If you want a cheaper one for 30,000 or so, you can use 85 mm 1.8. Okay. Good lens for portraiture. Okay. Or anything above that, higher focal length It will give you good portraits. Now, as far as photojournalism goes, basically it is telling a story without the use of words and only using pictures. Okay? So the scope of photojournalism, I really don't know, because as of today, we are seeing most of the things coming in video, hardly anything coming in terms of photos. So video is king today. And so if you're into news and stuff like that, weblogs, video is king. Okay. And so that's something you may want to look at in terms of photojournalism. And in photojournalism, ethics are very high in terms of you have to portray the thing as it is. Okay. And it is very challenging because situations are difficult and your frame has to tell the story. So please remember, all of you, for any aspect of photography, the background tells the story. The background tells your story. So make sure your background is appropriate for your story. Okay. First thing, make sure the background is clear. Make sure it's not cluttered. Make sure it tells something more about your subject and so on. Right. Next.
Madhulika is saying the need to understand about night photography or low light photography.
Night photography is always done with a tripod, number one. Number two, when you're trying to get the exposure in night photography, it's difficult if you're using any of the automatic or semi-automatic modes. So you have to shoot in manual mode. Okay, use the lowest ISO. Make sure you're using a tripod. Make sure you're using, if you're shooting landscape, cityscape kind of thing, make sure you start at f8 or 11 or 16 or 22, depending on how much depth of field you want. Okay, and you have to use these settings on your manual manual settings on your phone, on your camera. Take a shot. After taking the shot, if you notice that it is dark or light, you adjust the shutter speed. So for example, if it is too dark, you lower down the shutter speed, make it slower, and take the next shot. So like this, by trial and error, you will gauge the exposure for night photography. Low light photography, you can use the automatic exposure mode like aperture priority, and you should get your shot along with auto ISO. If you're particular about noise, then use the lowest ISO and shoot in manual. Right? So if you're doing night photography, consider blue hour photography. You will get beautiful pictures. Okay. Also in night photography, make sure that your exposure does not blow out important areas which are highlighted or bright areas. Of course, if you're going to shoot a street lamp, you're going to get it blown out. There's no way you're going to not get it blown out. Okay? But other areas like a building which is lit up, it should not be blown out. It should have enough exposure in it. Okay? So if you want to take a look at an example, here are some night exposures. Like this was taken, this is a multiple exposure taken at night, okay, where I've taken different exposure of the moon and put it together to show the eclipse. This was done in Mumbai, and these were the cars that were passing by. Okay, so I made sure that the moon, even though it is bright enough, has not been overexposed, as you can see in this image. Okay. You can see detail in the moon. So in order to get a shot like this, you have to underexpose the moon and then integrate it into your picture. Notice that you can almost read the sign on this image. So I've tried to keep the highlights as low as possible in this image. So that's something that you need to keep in mind when you're doing night photography. Next.
Yes, Arvind Upadhyay is saying, what are the ethics of photography in sports sector?
What are the effects?
Ethics.
Done sir, done. हो गया sir, हो गया. Thank you sir. हो गया.
हो गया?
Sir, हाँ sir.
So someone is saying about Wildlife Institute, some tips about wildlife photography during safari. Okay. Number one is when you're on safari, you're in a jeep or in a truck or something like that, so you can't move. So make sure you get a good place Don't sit in the middle of the truck because you'll not get a vantage point to shoot, or the Jeep. Make sure you sit at the window, near the window side. Number two, make sure you take a sandbag with you, which you can use to support your lens. If you are using a long lens, it's very heavy, your hands are going to pain. If you don't have a sandbag, take a monopod. Place your camera on a monopod and use that as a support. So you'll get much better shots and your hands will not pain. Number three, make sure that you don't use flash, otherwise those people will shout at you. Number four, make sure that you are on a proper setting like aperture priority or shutter priority. Okay, if you're shooting in manual mode, you're going to be surprised because there will be areas of shadow and light, and your exposure is going to change very rapidly. Okay? And the next thing you need to keep in mind is your metering mode. Mostly people use matrix mode because there's no time to focus and stuff like that. But if you have time to adjust your exposure, you can choose spot metering to get the exact light that you want in your image. And you can also make sure that you're using a group focus points, especially if you're shooting flying birds or animals which are on the move, which will help you to focus on the subject quickly. Those are some of the tips you can use for wildlife. Next.
So I think there are no questions. One more question.
Yes.
Subhajit.
How can I adjust the aperture and smartphone? Is that the one?
Yes, yes.
About photojournalism, I've said already. See, with regard to aperture, the higher end phones give you a little control over the aperture. But the budget phones and the lower end phones don't give you much control over the aperture. So in the middle end phones, you have an option called portrait mode, okay, where you can have a slight shallow depth of field. But trying to use aperture on a phone is really asking for too much. Okay, so you have to check your phone if the basic software, the basic camera software app is allowing you to use that. Otherwise, you can download a trial pro camera app, okay, camera app that gives you professional capabilities, and see if that is possible there. So there are many apps. I don't have time to go into it. So you can take a look at that, and maybe that will help you to adjust the picture on your smartphone. Which are the Photoshop apps that can be freely used on mobile? Well, you have Snapseed, okay? Snapseed. Snapseed is a very useful software which you can process all your pictures. Got a lot of tools and things like that which you can use to process your pictures on your phone. Okay. Anything else? Color grading. Well, color grading is a topic in itself. It takes very long to talk about it. Basically, color grading is nothing but adding color in a way in which, color grading is mostly used in videos to give a cinematic kind of look to your image. But if you are using Photoshop, you can look up color lookup tables as an adjustment, color lookup tables. And in that, you'll be able to automatically get a different look to your picture in terms of color grading.
Okay.
So one more question that someone had is about long exposures and about shooting slow motion on your phone or camera. Well, the slow motion is set by the frame rate for your video. So the higher the frame rate in your video, the lower the speed that can be adjusted. Okay, so shooting at 60 FPS or 120 FPS, depending on the capability of your camera or phone, you will be able to get slow motion kind of effects. There are other phones like my phone, which gives me a slow motion mode or a hyperlapse mode, which will let me shoot slow motion video on my phone itself, okay, without changing any settings.
Sir, one more question.
Yes.
From Facebook. Which camera would you suggest? 30 to 50K range.
Difficult to say at this time. I have not really updated myself on the camera prices right now, but I would suggest, if how would you decide on the choice of a camera? You decide on the choice of the camera depending on the field of work you are in and for what purpose you're going to use the camera. If you're going to use it outdoors, then make sure that the camera build is good. So you'll have to go in for a camera which is above 50,000. Okay. Number two is, if you're going to use it just for some time, then it's fine, go in for a cheaper camera. If you're going to use it on a regular basis, invest in a better camera first. Don't make the foolish decision of buying a cheap camera first and then trying to upgrade it afterwards. Okay? So if you are sure that this is the line you want to pursue and you're going to work on it regularly and this is something that you are crazy about, spend good money on it, buy a full frame camera, buy the best possible lens, buy the best possible camera in your budget and go with it. Okay? So there are cameras like, I don't know right now, I've not updated myself on the current ones, but I think the D80, D90 series, something like that in Canon. And in the Sony, there is the A6500 or later 7000 series. Or in Fuji, I don't think you will get in that price. In Nikon, you have the 5500 or something like that, which you will get in that price range. Okay. I would suggest that try to buy the camera in your price range, which got the best possible noise performance, which gives you the least possible noise. Okay, that is something which is important in your pictures. So take a look at that. Yes.
So हमें लगता है सर कि अब सवालों का सिलसिला जो है यहीं रोकना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि सवाल बहुत सारे हैं। तो दो दिन की इस ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम के हम आखिरी पड़ाव पे हैं अभी। हमें पता है कि आपके सवालों के जवाब अभी खत्म नहीं हुए हैं और ये लगातार चलते रहेंगे, लेकिन 2 दिनों में फोटोग्राफी को समझाया जाना मुमकिन नहीं है, क्योंकि ये बहुत ही प्रैक्टिकल फील्ड है। इसमें प्रैक्टिकली इसमें आपको लगना पड़ता है। ऐसे में आपको चाहिए कि आप हमसे जुड़ें ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा। जब आप जुड़ेंगे, फोटोग्राफी सोसाइटी ऑफ इंडिया से जुड़ेंगे, हमसे जुड़ेंगे, मंदसौर यूनिवर्सिटी से जुड़ेंगे, तो आपको इस फील्ड में करियर की जो अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ हैं, जो स्कोप है, हो सकता है कि आप उसमें काबिल हो पाएँ। तो हमारा यही उद्देश्य था इस 2 दिन की कार्यशाला का, कि हम आपको एक बेसिक जानकारी दे पाएँ, एक बेसिक्स फोटोग्राफी का दे पाएँ, टूल्स बता पाएँ, उसकी टेक्निक्स बता पाएँ। जो सर ने बखूबी बताया है, वो जो कमेंट्स सेक्शन में जो कमेंट्स आ रहे हैं, जो फेसबुक पर जो कमेंट्स आ रहे हैं, उससे पता चल रहा है कि ब्रेंडन सर ने जो हमें मार्गदर्शन दिया है वो हमारे लिए बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट होगा। बहुत सारे टीचर्स हमसे जुड़े थे, बहुत सारे जो स्टूडेंट्स वो हमसे जुड़े थे, सभी ने अप्रिसिएट किया इस 2 दिन की कार्यशाला को। हम इसे भविष्य में 6 डेज की या 7 डेज की भी करेंगे, ऐसी उम्मीद करते हैं। हमारे राजेंद्र सर इसमें अगर हामी भरेंगे तो हम जरूर इसको 6 डेज या 7 डेज का कर सकते हैं, और इसको प्रैक्टिकली भी करेंगे, क्योंकि 2 दिनों में प्रैक्टिकल जो आपने फोटोग्राफ्स आज क्लिक की थी उस पर सबको बता पाना, सबके व्यूज दे पाना, बहुत कम टाइम था हमारे पास में। तो हम आने वाले दिनों में इसको पूरा करेंगे। दूसरा, जरूरी हो जाता है कि ऐसे समय में जब हम काम कर रहे हैं, ऐसे समय में जब हम फोटोग्राफी सीख रहे होते हैं, तो हमें चाहिए कि पेशेंस हमारा बना रहे। 2 घंटे में मैं देख रहा हूँ कि कई सारे ऐसे लोग हैं जो सर्टिफिकेट फीडबैक लिंक नहीं मिल रहा है, सर्टिफिकेट नहीं है वगैरह वगैरह। तो उससे थोड़ा बचिए। आप लोग लर्निंग प्रोसेस के लिए आए थे, आप नॉलेज शेयरिंग के लिए यहाँ आए थे, तो आप उस पर फोकस ज़्यादा रहें, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा आगे भी रहिएगा। हम उन्हीं लोगों को मौका देंगे जो इस तरीके की बात, इस तरीके के लर्निंग प्रोसेस को वो स्टार्ट करने वाले, लर्निंग प्रोसेस को वो ऑब्जर्व करना चाहते हैं। तो हम आने वाले दिनों में ऐसे प्रोग्राम और करेंगे, हम आपको बताएंगे। जी, तो हम तो सबसे पहले तो राजेंद्र वाघमारे जी का धन्यवाद इस 2 दिन की ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम के लिए, जो हमें इन्होंने मौका दिया। दूसरा, शशांक जी हमारे बीच में है, शशांक जी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। हमारे आज के जो मेंटर थे 2 दिन के कार्यशाला के, ब्रेंडन व्यास सर, उनको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। हम उम्मीद करते हैं आने वाले दिनों में आप हमसे जुड़ेंगे और इसी तरीके से हमारा मार्गदर्शन करते रहेंगे। दो जरूरी सूचनाएं मुझे आपको देनी है। जो फीडबैक लिंक जो सर्टिफिकेट के लिए आने वाला है, जो सर्टिफिकेट जिससे आपको मिल सकता है, वो मैं आपको व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप पर दूंगा या टेलीग्राम ग्रुप पर आपको मिल जाएगा। आप बहुत ज़्यादा पैनिक ना करें, आपको सारे सर्टिफिकेट्स वहीं मिल जाएंगे, डोंट वरी, ठीक है। तो सर मुझे लगता है कि हम इसे वाइंड अप करें।
जरूर।
राजेंद्र
और
सर,
जैसे जी हमारा भी एक फीडबैक फॉर्म रहेगा फॉर PSI के
हाँ
लिए, तो वो भी आप जरा शेयर कीजिए और सारे सभी
हाँ,
participants के साथ।
हमने शेयर कर दिया है, ऑलरेडी हम शेयर कर चुके हैं। और जो भी लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं वो फोटोग्राफिक सोसाइटी ऑफ इंडिया का फेसबुक पेज जो है वो लाइक कर लें। वहाँ बहुत सारी डेली वहाँ पर एक ऐसी, जैसे हमने 2 दिन का किया, वहाँ डेली इस तरीके की वर्कशॉप होती रहती हैं, तो आप उनसे भी जुड़ सकते हैं, ठीक है। और मेंबरशिप जो PSI की जो मेंबरशिप है उसके लिए भी आप जो है फोटोग्राफिक सोसाइटी ऑफ इंडिया के फेसबुक पेज, उसकी वेबसाइट पर जा करके आप उसके मेंबर भी बन सकते हैं। जरूरी है कि आप जिस डिग्री पर आप काम कर रहे हैं, जो जिस डिग्री को आप ले रहे हैं, जैसे कि आप BA BSc BCom MCom जो भी आपके पास अभी चल रही है आपकी डिग्री, उसमें आपको चाहिए कि आप उससे अलग एक ऐसा टेक्निकल पढ़ लें, आप ऐसा टेक्निकल फील्ड को पढ़ें जिससे कि आपको रोजगार के कई अवसर और मिल सकते हैं। जैसे वो फोटोग्राफी हो सकती है, वो डिजिटल एंड सोशल मीडिया मार्केटिंग हो सकती है, वो फिल्म मेकिंग हो सकती है। तो आप उससे जुड़े। मंदसौर विश्वविद्यालय ऐसे कई सारे मंच प्रोवाइड कराता है, कई सारे हमने कोर्सेज लॉन्च किए हैं 6 मंथ के, 1 ईयर के, जिनसे आप लगातार हमसे जुड़ सकते हैं। आपके पास कॉन्टेक्ट नंबर है, आपके पास में हमारे ईमेल IDs हैं, आप हमसे वहाँ पर जुड़ सकते हैं। तो आप हमसे जुड़े, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। एक बार फिर से PSI की पूरी टीम को धन्यवाद, मंदसौर विश्वविद्यालय की पूरी टीम को धन्यवाद, और आप सब पार्टिसिपेंट्स का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। शुक्रिया हमसे जुड़ने के लिए।
आपका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू सर।
थैंक यू सर।
थैंक यू मनीष सर, थैंक यू मंदसौर यूनिवर्सिटी, जिन्होंने हमको इतना अच्छे से वेबिनार कर रहे हैं और आगे भी करते रहेंगे हमारे लिए। थैंक यू सर।